Welcome to the InStory show. I'm Devorah Spillman, and our theme this season is Making Midlife Magic, how to reconnect to your purpose, your story, and your soul. And today I am thrilled to welcome InStory expert Carol Arcus. Hi, Carol.
Hi, Devorah. How are you?
Wonderful, all the way from Australia. It's so great to have you. So I'm going to read a little bit about Carol and then we will dive in. Carol Arcus is a spiritual coach, divine channel, and author. In 2020, she received a spoken spiritual transmission that told her how to release 2,000 years of fears held in her body. She is now offering this unique method out into the world, and we are going to get a taste of it too. So as I like to start for this series, I would want you to share from your perspective, what does making midlife magic mean to you?
It's such a great question. And I think, the older you get, the more that magic is important. And for me, magic started for me 4 years ago. So 4 years ago, I uncovered the truth of who I really was, of why I'd been here, why I was living the life I was living. And I uncovered the fact that I was a walk-in. And for your viewers that don't know what a walk-in is, it means I wasn't born into this body. It meant I came in when this body was 17 years old. And this has had a profound effect, not just for me, but for the body and for the original soul that didn't want to stay here anymore, because that was the reason. That original one was unhappy with the life and unhappy with her lot and desired to leave. And I knew as part of her soul group that although she might feel like that in a human form, the minute she got back, she was going to realize that she'd missed out on an opportunity. So I swapped literally with her from her soul group, from part of her guide group. So I came into the body to live out the life that she wanted to live and live out the experiences and relationships that she wanted to do. So this was...
Did you didn't know this though back then, what this was?
No. So this was, I woke up literally after a suicide attempt, feeling completely different.
Wow.
So feeling so very, very different, and no depression, no feelings of depression, no feelings of darkness, and feeling that the world was new. And to me, it was new, but I didn't know that. I didn't know the reason for that. But within a few months, I had left home. I'd even changed my name. I'd even shortened my name, and I never went back to Caroline, which was what I'd always used. I shortened it to Carol. I left home. I just felt independent. It was a whole different way of feeling and being, but I had no reason. No one told me anything. I wasn't getting a spiritual guide in my ear saying, actually, and there was a very good reason for that. And they couldn't tell me that for 40 years. For 40 years, I lived out the life that the original needed to live out, because she needed those experiences completed. So for 40 years, I didn't know. I had an inkling that there was something different, but I wasn't certain. And so it took all of those years for me to live her life, and all the relationships she had, and all the good times, the bad times, the things not working out, they were all purposefully done, and they were purposeful experiences that needed to be done, needed to be completed and experienced.
So what happened when you were what happened after 40 years?
Well, what I didn't know was, as I say, I didn't know what had happened, but I did recognize that were things changing in my world. I did recognize that there were differences. My work life had improved. I seemed to be more settled. There seemed to be things working well for me. And I started to move back into spiritual interests. I started reading again more spiritual things. I went back into some practices that I had left alone for a long time. And I found that I was feeling far more settled. But the crunch came when I tried to integrate inner child. And anyone that's tried to integrate inner child knows how difficult it can be. I had an added difficulty because I was trying to integrate a piece of my soul that didn't belong to the soul that was now here. And that was the key final piece in the puzzle that made me fully know that I was not the same person that was born here.
Wow. Okay, I've heard about this a little before, and I'm sure some people have heard of this. And it's, part of so much of what you're doing is opening up some of these new understandings of how to explain things. So, all right, we'll keep going. What do you want to tell us? Do you want to tell us back or forward?
Well, we'll go a little bit forward into the magic,
Okay.
because I was living a very, very normal life. I was going to work every day, and I was working for the government, and I was involved with tax law, of all things. I was not being particularly creative or psychic or anything of that nature, but I'm literally walking to work, and literally a 5-minute walk I had left in my commute. And I heard in my head a voice that I hadn't heard for possibly 20 years. And it was one of my guides who I hadn't heard of for that long. And what he said was, "We want you to write about why women cry."
Wow.
And I'm walking and I'm thinking, okay, why? And because I wasn't a writer. All I did was journal. I hadn't written. I've never written anything. And he said, "Your women cry alone at night, and they think we don't hear, and they think we don't care, but we do. And this is what we hear." And for about a brief moment, I heard the screaming and the wailing of female voices. And I was literally nearly at the front door of my office block, and that was it. And that was all I got. And I'm walking through the doors thinking, what has just happened? What am I doing? What am I supposed to do? What? And I literally went to my desk and just sat there, and luckily no one else in my team was there. And I just sort of made a coffee and sat there and thought, I had no idea what is going to happen. And I had no idea. And then within a week, literally within a week, I started to get more and more messages in my journaled writing from my guide, who had never given me a name, by the way, never. And he started to say, "You are going to get written messages, and you don't have to worry about it. It will just all happen naturally." And of course, I was completely freaked out. I was, how is anything going to happen naturally? I don't know how to write anything. I don't do this. They even kept me at home for 2 weeks with an illness, and actually not terrible, just a very bad cold, because they said, "We want you to be rested. We want to have you at home for a while." Immediately after that was done, I went to work. And the next night I was told to sit in front of the computer with an open Word document, and I started hearing, and I was literally taking dictation. And first up, it was always my guide. And he said, "For this, my name is Isaiah, for this book." He wasn't saying his name was Isaiah, because of course, names in the spiritual world don't mean what it means to us. But that's the name he said to call him for this. So night after night, for about 45 minutes, I would take dictation. And those pieces were about 1,000 words, somewhere between 800 and 1,000 words. Now, that's really difficult to do if you're a creative writer, even, because I've learned since then, you don't type at that rate. But of course, I was taking dictation. I wasn't thinking about words. I was just hearing. And he brought so many different people, can I say, or beings to talk to me. And he introduced me to Gaia, to masters, to all kinds of different beings that wanted to talk about women. And it wasn't just they wanted to say why this had happened. They wanted to say, what they thought about it and how they thought things could be different. And they wanted to talk about the world and the state of the world. And they wanted to talk about men and patriarchy. So some of it was quite shocking. And I'm actually looking at the pieces sometimes afterwards, I'm thinking, can I publish this? And is this okay? Like, I'm not sure. Because some of them were quite revolutionary. Some of them were like, this is all gone wrong and it's all because of men. And it's like, well, I don't know that I should say that or write that, you know. So I just took the pieces down, and that took about 4 or 5 months. And this was all preceding COVID. So before the world started being focused on that, this was the messages that I had received.
Wow. So what happened to it?
Well, and then of course I had all these pieces of writing, you know, and they didn't give me any instructions of what to do with pieces of writing. They didn't say how to turn them into something. So I was left with this problem that I knew nothing about writing. I knew nothing about how to structure a book, and yet I somehow had to find a way. So I did get myself a writing coach, and I did try and learn about structure, but I was really trying to do it on my own. I didn't know anything about it, and I found myself getting more and more confused and uncertain. And I tried maybe 3 or 4 different ways, and I would package things into like a theme and another theme, and then I would try to do part 1, part 2, and that didn't work. And I was getting confused, and I thought this was normal. I thought this was what everyone did when they were trying to write a book. And I even said to them, because some of this journaling I was still getting messages through journaling. And I even wrote, well, can you tell me how I'm supposed to do this? And I got the message. It was like, we are the writers. You are the author. You have to work it out. And it's funny when you say it, but it was actually quite, I was totally confused. And I hadn't told anyone at work. I hadn't told anyone about the whole thing. And I'm not that, I think I worked in a very, strict sort of government. It wouldn't have gone down, so I couldn't even talk about it to anyone. So yeah, this feeling of uncertainty kept going, and I was beginning to realize this was my fears coming out in this.
Mm-hmm.
But realizing it and I still didn't know what to do about it. And so that leads to the next really big magic moment. It was a Sunday afternoon. It was cold in Melbourne. It was winter. And I was told by a female voice in my head, go get a hot drink and go and sit in the park. And I had a really nice park I used to go to very close by. So I made myself a hot drink in a keep cup, a peppermint tea, and I took it to the park, and I sat down and I looked around, very few people around. And then I heard this female voice in my head start to talk. And she talked, and this is the process that I'm gonna share later. And she talked through, and it was all to do with ancestors. It was all to do with the bloodline. It was all to do with genetics and inherited memory, inherited emotion, inherited fears. And she led me through a process, and she told me through this process, you have to drink. You take a sip of water or the drink, the peppermint tea, as I say. So we did one process. Her voice never came back to me. She gave me this one process, and it was almost like a key was unlocked. I felt around me the energy shift. I felt internally the energy shift. And I wondered, was this it? Was this a key to fears that I'd had all my life? So I repeated that in that same afternoon. I repeated it again with slightly different words, calling back different types of ancestors, different problems, because it seemed to be related to ancestors that had died in bad circumstances. So in other words, you know, if we think about history, it was all the ancestors that had died because they had spoken out loud, because they had said something that they shouldn't have said to the authorities, that they had wanted to stand up for some injustice but had got killed, that had wanted to speak their truth. So it was all these things that over centuries and centuries had accumulated. And with the fact that we inherit through our DNA all kinds of things, I'd inherited all these fears. So this felt huge to me. And over 2 weeks, I literally probably did maybe 10, 15, 20 of these different clearings. One day I even did about 4, and I felt myself even getting spacey and lightheaded because I could feel the energy around me. And I kept doing it in the park, and I kept feeling it afterwards. And I kept feeling at one point like I had this army of strong women behind me that were standing with me in energy and standing with me and saying, you can do this. We can do it together. Now we're all free. We will help you do this. Get this book done. Within a few weeks, I had settled on a structure. I had settled on how I was going to do it, and I moved forward with publishing.
Wow. So after that new process came to you, that cleared the way, and you were able to you were able to see what you do on the book yourself.
Yeah. It was quite astounding, and it was the key. It was most definitely the key to unlocking the fears that were stopping me moving forward.
Wow. Wow. Well, all right, we're going to get a little taste of what this process is. So for everybody watching, what you should do is pause the video now for a moment and go get a glass of water. We're just going to get a short sample, but you'll still need to take a little drink of water when instructed. And then when you come back and you start the video, then Carol will go ahead and she'll explain a little bit more and lead it, and then it's going to connect to also what you're going to get from her for the free gift. So that's really great. Okay. All right. Everybody's back with their water. I've got mine. All right. Tell us what we're going to do.
Well, we're going to do a burst of clearing and healing your ancestors that had their voice silenced in some way. So we're going to be freeing their voice, which in turn will free your voice, because your fears with it are actually really mostly their fears. So what we're going to do is we're going to have a drink and next to us, and I will say just once to have just had to take a sip of drink to your ancestors. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close my eyes, and then I'm just going to start, and you can just
close our eyes too, right?
You can close your eyes, or you can just sit quietly and just listen, and just for that very short moment. And you may feel like it's a type of meditative. It feels very meditative. So just relax, and that's all you have to do.
Okay.
So take a deep breath in and just let everything go. Let the day's worries go and feel present in this moment. So calling back our ancestors. Calling back our ancestors that were stopped from speaking. Calling back our ancestors that were told not to speak evil. Calling back our ancestors that were told not to speak their truth. Calling back our ancestors that were stopped, beaten, imprisoned, controlled, physically stopped from speaking their truth, speaking what they believed, speaking up for others, speaking up to protect. All those over the last 500 years that were stopped from speaking and that were imprisoned, jailed, silenced, killed, abused, tortured, all those, calling you back here now to receive divine love, divine wisdom, divine blessings, and asking that the divine love now move through the last 500 years of our ancestors, moving through enlightening, bringing wisdom, bringing truth, bringing a whole new way of thinking and being, calling back our ancestors for 500 years that were stopped for speaking their truth, calling you back here now to receive the divine love. 500 years where you felt you could not speak, 500 years, and now the divine love is making its way through to you now. And as the divine love touches you, there is the realization of truth, of the divine wisdom that comes with the light and the love of the divine, comes the understanding and realization that everything is exactly how it is supposed to be, exactly how it was supposed to be. And with this knowledge, you can be free, can relax, knowing that all is right, all is true. And with this freedom and light and divine love, I say thank you and I drink to you. And just take a few moments just to sit and feel the energy as it moves through the system. It will take a few days to settle. The 500 years of your ancestors are now able to be free and to relax and to be at peace. And so it is.
Thank you. And so, Carol, take us a little bit more. We have a little bit more time for you to talk a little bit more about that, and you know, and kind of maybe even a little bit more about the speaking. You know, this, you know, so much of InStory is not being is coming out of hiding and daring to be seen and heard. And so maybe speak into that a little bit, and any other pieces of this work that you want to kind of speak into.
Yeah, so the process that you've just listened to is part of, normally I go through a much longer process, and I will go back quite a few thousand years. In the original process that she gave me, it was 2000 years. And for a long time, I stuck with that until earlier this year. And then I've realized that there are some very deeply held fears that originated far, far long ago. Because as humans, we've been here a long time and we've had the same problems. We've had, you know, the same problems with everything, you know, the environment, the animals, the each other, you know, the warring tribes. This is part of human history. So we've been scared off. We've been, you know, subject to violence. We've been subject to all kinds of slavery and manipulation, all kinds of things we've done to each other. So I started to go back 200,000 years. And the funny story about that was quite bizarre. I was planning a trip and I was looking at all different things, and I was looking at places where I could go to see snow and ice, because obviously I'm in Australia and we don't have so much of that. And I was looking at holidays, and there was this part of me that felt really nervous about it. And I kept looking at it and I'm thinking, but it looks so good. But why am I thinking all the bad things, you know, all the clothes I have to buy and how I might be uncomfortable? And I thought, wait a minute, is this ancestral? And if this is ancestral, this is going back a long way. This is likely going back into very far reaches of the beginnings of human history. So I decided to go back 200,000 years. And I was right, because I could feel the energy, the further and further back, became stronger and stronger. Excuse me. My ancestors were warning me not to go to snow and ice because I would die.
Wow.
And they were telling me not to.
Right. I mean, that's part of what I have understood from the work we've done together around the process is that these ancient fears that are no longer current for us have been translated into our energy and our DNA and all that, so that often you'll find people who are afraid of something and they don't know why. Like you were like, why is this bothering me? And
Mm.
this is one, there are many answers to these questions, but this is like a new answer in a sense to this question when something is like either a phobia or a fear or a resistance or a constant like same pattern that you can't do or something like that. And this is what's been so interesting is that it turns out it's not the person's current story that's doing that.
That's right. So for me, they were warning me because this is actually a beautiful evolutionary warning system that we've been gifted as humans. We've been gifted the knowledge of our ancestors and what hurt them. So their knowledge and their wisdom has been translated into us and as a warning system to say, to protect us from the things that hurt them. Now, the things that hurt them, though, 200,000 years ago is likely not going to be the things that are going to hurt you now. And the same things that happened, say, in the mid-century, so say 1500s, where, you know, people may have loved their herbal medicines, but unfortunately, the fears of witchcraft meant that they were likely to be killed as witches, even though most of them were midwives and used herbal medicines, and that was all they did. So the same fears have continued through, but we in this century think they're ours. But really, it's a compounding. It's our little bit of story plus a whole lot of other stories all linked together. So this is now, you know, for us in this century, this is a problem. This is a compounding problem. So anyone I've found for myself that's worked on something for years and years and years, you have most likely resolved your part in this. But what you haven't done is resolved your ancestors' part, because they are still warning you about that thing, that thing. So if they were killed for speaking out in 1400 and something, then likely you will feel hesitation about speaking or writing now.
Yeah. So tell us a little bit about the free gift and what they're going to get to get a bigger taste of this.
So the free gift is a beautiful discovery I made, that we have also inherited feelings of shame from our ancestors. And this video recording I made will clear 20,000 years of your ancestors' shame. When I stumbled across this myself, I was instantly felt uplifted, as if a burden had been removed from me. So it is, and it's a huge thing to feel a release of something that you no longer need to carry. And this again is something we've inherited unconsciously, subconsciously, but in the body. It's not to do with our spirit or soul. It is literally our body's warning system, but it's also inherited other things. And shame is a big thing that I know how good I felt, and I wanted everyone to get that wonderful feeling of release and an unburdenment. Yeah.
Right. And so just like when we sat here and Carol let us do that, when you get her video, you'll literally be able to just sit and receive it and follow the directions and notice, and you know, you can obviously come back to it again, right? If they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Just literally, it is for you to sit. It is a quiet, gentle process, and it just allows your ancestors to feel heard, supported, and the drinking to them is really important. It's this physical appreciation of them. Like you would drink to someone in a celebration, this is drinking to them in celebration of them giving you and being with you.
Yeah, it's such a fascinating experience for me to hear some of what's been given to you and what's coming through you. Carol's part of my InStory coaching, and she's brought forward a number of things that were given to you but not being brought out, right? Like, wasn't there like a chunk of this that was like you had it but it wasn't coming out?
So are you talking about the joy side of things? The manifesting extra joy in your life?
Right, and also being willing to talk about things you couldn't talk about.
Yeah, well, a big part of this is that I do have very many ancestors that were killed as witches. So this is a very big part of my back history and back ancestral history. But also recently discovered that I also had a major soul part of me that was also in that space of not speaking evil because of fear of pain and torture. So this is also something I've had to just recently go back 200,000 years, and it was all to do with snakes, all to do with keeping quiet because I was going to be literally tortured with snake bite directly into my throat by speaking my truth, which at some point in history was evil. But yeah, evil is in the hands of who's ruling at the moment.
Right. And I mean, a lot of us are reclaiming that sense in all different ways of being able to come out of hiding and dare to be seen and heard, to speak these gifts, these truths, and these new insights that are coming to us. So also you can find the book on women got published, right? It's on
Yes,
Amazon. It's
yes.
called
So
She,
it's
right?
called She, A Remarkable Spiritual Conversation, and you can find it on Amazon, and it's very accessible. So
Yeah, I mean, I
yeah,
think it's a free Kindle download. You just go to Carol's name, go to the book sheet, and you can get, this is like an extra free gift.
it is. And
For you.
and use it as a book, not maybe to read all the way through, but just literally just open a page and you will find something very special, because there are some hugely special moments in there that I still treasure, and that I'm still understanding what it truly meant, some of it.
Yeah.
I had a message from Gaia that I was so embarrassed the other day when I told Devorah that I had ignored it, because one of the big messages she gave me was that women need to sit in a dark room at night to recharge their batteries, to recharge and refresh. Women need the darkness, a dark room. If they can see the moon, if they can see the stars, that's great, but just to sit. And it's like the darkness feels like a velvet cloak. And if you allow yourself to do it, it feels pretty good. And I had also forgotten that part, but there is some very interesting messages, and any page you turn to, there'll be something that you need to see.
Yeah. And this is true for so many of you watching, whether you've gotten downloads that turn into books. We all get these spiritual downloads and then we're afraid to share them. We know they're the real deal. And sometimes it's a matter of reminding yourself to go back and look at them again, just like you were saying. And sometimes it's being brave enough to realize they're meant to be shared. Because that's one of the things that we've worked on is, okay, it's time for you to talk about it. It's
Yeah.
not enough to just get these downloads, but at a certain point, they have to be shaped and shared to go out in the world. And so clearly some of this process that has come to you has allowed you to do that.
Yes, yes. So very much so. For last 2 years, I've been writing a memoir, and that has been quite a challenging. It's a very powerful part of my life where I was initiated into the spiritual realm, and initiated in a very uncomfortable, traumatic way. And it's very similar to shamanic initiations. But I was terrified to talk about it, terrified to speak about it, terrified to do anything with it. So this is only just now at the professional editing stage where, and this is like happened 20 years ago, over 20 years ago now. So yeah, so this is the same thing. The fears of speaking will stop you, and it's good for you. It's good to unlock and unburden and share these things. It's good to share the knowledge you have.
Right.
And I felt so much better. I felt again hugely relieved when I'd finished it.
I know. I remember exactly. I remember we talked about it with being not edited, but illuminated. And I remember sitting with you and you went, oh, and the next day you said, I did it.
Yeah.
Like this is what we become able to do for each other. It's part of what the InStory work does, part of what Carol's work does. What we're working on all together is this unlocking of these blocks for each other so that we start to open up this path.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, the more that I think we support each other, the more that we can do, the more that we can move through together with our own personal projects, and feel the satisfaction and feel that sense of accomplishment and the magic, really, the magic that comes.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, that's part of this Making Midlife Magic, is this courage to show up and say, I'm going to find a way.
Yeah.
You know, like one thing you've done, Carol, is say, I don't know how to do this yet, but I'm going to trust what's given to me, and I am going to find a way. And then a way opens up.
Yeah.
You know,
and not to be afraid to ask for help.
right. Such a big
Yeah.
thing, right?
Yeah.
And you ask for help from like the invisible realm, and sometimes you have to ask for help from each other, you know, from a person to help you.
Yeah. And you know, I think when you ask, and whether you meditate or you invoke or you pray, whether you call them the divine or God or any other name or word, that you will get the person showing up that will help you, because that's what the divine does. They put the person in front of you that you need.
I know. It's amazing. So all of you watching, trust your intuitive connection. Trust when you feel this connection, this opening. You know, if this felt resonant to you, then get Carol's free gift. Do the process. Feel free to reach out to her. Trust this opening that you're here. Trust the reason that you're here. Trust the moment. It's a powerful thing. So just before we wrap up, Carol, you want to leave us with a last thought or two before we finish up?
Well, just a quick one about joy. Everyone has moments of joy in their life, and you can seed more joy. It's just grabbing it at that tiny second, whatever it is that's giving you a moment of joy. Take it through your body, take the sensation of joy and bring it out through your forehead. Just tiny little seeds, whether it's that first sip of coffee, whether it's that beautiful dress in the shop window, whether it's that song on the radio, whatever fills you joy, bring it through your heart, up through your forehead, and you will be seeding more and more joy, and you will start noticing more joy moments through your day.
I love that. So good. Thank you, Carol, so much. And everybody, as I always say in farewell, remember to go out in the world, share your story, live your purpose, and be a blessing. Bye, everybody.
Bye.